The 2012 sanction that the ACCJC put on City College paved the way for the ruling last summer for them to revoke our accreditation effective as of July 2014. This sanction put on us in 2012 also paved the way for the Board of Governors to install a special trustee with extraordinary powers, a STWEP. He set aside the democratically elected Board of Trustees of City College. This installation of the STWEP actually required 2 emergency actions on the part of the Board of Governors. The first was to change their own rules by adding necessary criteria to install a STWEP. You know, originally the criteria just said that if the school was financially insolvent, then you could do this. They changed it to add language that the criteria would include threats to accreditation. And they needed to do this because City College was not financially insolvent, contrary to what you might have been led to believe by the mainstream media. So the language was changed, and in the next 30 seconds, the STWEP was installed. This essentially was a hostile takeover of our college. It removed all vestiges of democracy, and the decisions of this STWEP have been unilateral and devastating. So what we're going to do today is I'm first going to let you hear from our lawyers, and they will give you the particulars of the lawsuit. And then we have speakers, most of whom are petitioners on this lawsuit, and they will speak to how this undemocratic process has adversely affected them and their community and the college at large.
Can you say spell your name?
Wendy Kaufman, Kaufmyn, engineering instructor here at City College since 1983, and I love my college. So now I gratefully introduce our lawyers, Dan Seigel and Neil Satterlund of the law firm Seigel and Yee, who this very morning, probably less than an hour ago, filed the legal papers, which they can explain.
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the members of the press who are here, as well as members of the public and our supporters. I'm going to just speak very briefly about what we've done. We filed a lawsuit which is called a petition for a writ of mandate. Basically what we're doing is we're asking the San Francisco Superior Court to issue an order to nullify the accrediting commission's decisions. And the rationale for this lawsuit is that the accrediting commission itself has operated in violation of the laws and regulations that are supposed to guide its deliberations. It's a pretty straightforward legal theory. The petition which we have brought with us today so that members of the media may have copies it explains what we're talking about, but basically the rules that are issued by the United States Department of Education, which are binding on the ACCJC, requires that it operate in a certain manner, which it has not operated. And I'll just give you a couple of examples of that. Number one, when they come in here and do evaluations, they're supposed to include academicians, i.e. teachers, on their visiting teams, and they have not done that except in the most tokenistic fashion. And when I say that, I'm not making that up. The Department of Education has already concluded that they violated the rules in terms of the composition of their teams. Secondly, and this is another example, when they find alleged problems, they're supposed to tell the institution about it so that the institution can cure those problems. They have not done that. In their final action leading to the decision to withdraw accreditation, they added a whole bunch of issues that they never addressed to the college here or gave the college an opportunity to respond to those problems. They're also supposed to avoid conflicts of interest, and this whole process is what we would say full of conflicts of interest. I'll give you two examples. Number one, Barbara Benno, the president of the ACCJC chose her husband to be one of the accreditors, to be one of the evaluators. Now, I can't imagine that Mr. Benno, or whatever his name is going to violate his spouse's position on all this. So that's a conflict of interest. The other thing that they've done is they've attempted to coerce the college into what we call pre-funding pension liability by paying money into a fund management organization. Now, there's two things the matter with that. Number one is that their expectation regarding the amount of money that needs to be paid in is approximately twice what the state requires. So it's a financial burden that cannot be justified by any stretch of the imagination. Secondly, the organization that they want City College to invest its funds into is an organization that's controlled by many members of the commission, including the vice chair and other people who are part of their process. So they're attempting not only to impose this unfair financial burden on the college, they're attempting to do that in a way where they have an actual conflict and an expectation of financial reward. So we think this process is a mess. We think that underlying it is simply a disagreement between the commission and the college over what the purpose of a community college is. As those of you who are students and staff and faculty members here, you know that this college has a long tradition and a practice of providing training and education to people who want it, not simply people who are stopping here for a couple of years on their way to a four-year college. This has always been a school which had as its mission the idea of providing education to people who are getting an associate degree on the way to a four-year college, but also people who will benefit from vocational training to carry out whatever life decisions they may want to make about their future and their careers, and also providing education. For example, English is a second language to approximately 20,000 students on a yearly basis, people who are not interested in getting a degree, but simply preparing themselves to succeed in life. And that's an incredibly valuable mission that this college has. And you know, the commission itself is part of a whole movement in this country to create a different type of educational system, what I call a two-track system, which devalues K-12 education and basically creates a model where at K-12, that's all you're supposed to do is master skills that are tested in standardized tests, and at the above 12 level, a vocational-based community college or junior college and four-year college system. And basically, it's all part of what we all know, what we've heard about, the standardized testing, the charter schools, the MOOCs, the mass online courses, to replace education that can prepare people to be productive and critical members of society with one that simply prepares people to be cogs in the economic engine of the United States. So we mean to put a stop to that, and we mean to put a stop to it right here at the Community College of San Francisco.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tariq Farrar, and I teach in the African American Studies Department in the Social Science Department. I've taught at CCSF for 22 years. The students that our department teaches are the most vulnerable, the most marginalized. They come from the most vulnerable and most marginalized communities in the country, and certainly in the San Francisco Bay Area. A majority of our students, 3/4 of our students, are African American and Latino. If we add Pacific Islanders and Filipino students, it comes to over 80%. The numbers are interesting. I mean, I'm not much on numbers, but the numbers are interesting. But every number has a name. Every number has a life. Every number has aspirations. And CCSF has become a lifeline for those aspirations. It's become the way that people get from where they are to where it's possible for them to go, where they want to be. In the past 10 years, since 2003, I've had 4 students that I know of that have been killed, that I know of. 2 whose faces I know all of their names, but 2 of their faces who I can remember. If we lose CCSF, there's going to be a lot more students, a lot more young women and men that we lose. Because this place is such a lifeline for those communities. The fact that this school is threatened with closure is, it's madness. It's complete, total madness. It represents a kind of callousness and irresponsibility that beggars the imagination. Now, Attorney Seigel, people standing here in this crowd, you know, everyone has talked about the quality of the education of this school. That has never been in question. And not only has it not been in question the quality of education, but the fact that CCSF is one of the best community colleges in the country, and I challenge Barbara Benno or anyone else to deny it. I challenge them, Bryce Harris, to show us the figures, the numbers that everyone likes. Show us the numbers that tell us something else. So on what possible, rational, reasonable, sane grounds can you close a school like this, when the mission that we are supposed to, that we're charged with, we've done so very well? In a democratic society, there is no place for an agency that has no accountability, that nobody has elected, that does not have to tell us, that can be operate in complete complete secrecy, and then that the decisions that no one can change their decisions. Their decisions are supposedly irreversible. There is no place in a democratic society for that.
Hi, everybody. City College was the first place that I heard the phrase undocumented and unafraid. Being part of SAFE, Students Advocating for Equity, and the Vida Resource Center helped me find my identity as a student that advocates for social justice regardless of the barriers. City College has been a major outlet to my community, my undocumented community, by allowing us to have our own space on campus, a place to go and meet other individuals that share the same struggles, a place where our voice counts, a place where we can exchange ideas and support each other in our educational goals, a place where we can say, I am undocumented and unafraid. You can be anyone from anywhere and find your place at City College. Due to the accreditation crisis, undocumented students are being disproportionately affected by having to find alternative ways to reach our educational goals. Some might have no other option but to drop out and go to work instead, and completely leave their educational goals behind, which is something that our families try to avoid when they cross the border here to give us a better future. The ACCJC has overlooked the incredible work that students have put into this college and instead added more financial obstacles that prevent us from continuing with our education. Our community is no longer invisible, and we will continue to fight to keep City College open and accessible for all. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Henry Wang, and I'm a music student here at San Francisco City College. And first, I want to thank a few individuals that gave me the opportunity for me to speak here on behalf of the students here of San Francisco City College. First, Professor Wendy Kaufman, Chair of the Music Department, Madeline Mueller, and Professor Judy Hubble. We've been fighting for this over the last few weeks, over the last few months, over the last few years, because we all have a fire in our heart. You see, every single person here that's standing beside us today, we all are passionate about music, arts, something. And what makes City College so amazing, ladies and gentlemen, is the diversity of the crowd that we have here, the diversity of the students. Not only that, but the intergenerational. You see, what I love about the City College, ladies and gentlemen, is we have students of all ages. Not just young 20-year-olds, but not just young 30, 40-year-olds, but we have people of all generations that can share their story, that shares your passion, shares the life struggles, ladies and gentlemen. What can we do to stay passionate? What can we do to help our attorney here? What can we do to help other professors here, ladies and gentlemen? What we could do is getting involved in the different organizations. We have a performing arts center meeting that we get together every single Friday in the building, and you can see Miss Wendy Coppin. She's the lady in the red. She has papers for you. Sorry, Madeline Mueller. Madeline Mueller. I'm getting too excited. It's okay to be excited over something you're passionate about. And because of that, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do here today is we're going to keep on fighting, and we're going to put our foot forward and not let corruption and people that do not have integrity beat us. Thank you.
And I've been teaching at the college since 1975. I was chair of the Women's Studies Department for 9 years. Currently, I coordinate Project Survive, which is the college's sexual violence prevention program. I came here in 1975 because the then chair of African American Studies thought I had a good idea for a course called Poetry for the People. I'm proud to say that course is still being taught today by a wonderful instructor, Lauren Muller. So when I went to the Mission Cultural Center on Day of the Dead on Saturday, and maybe some of you were there, my heart was warmed, but my soul was chilled when I stood in front of an altar. Now, you have to know that the theme of the Mission Cultural Center Day of the Dead this year was La Llorona, the weeping woman. And what was she weeping for? The loss of the mission, the gentrification of this city. And I would like to link that to the potential destruction of City College. So I stood in front of this altar created by Carmen Melendez, a wonderful City College student. And I looked and I looked and I looked. And I saw all kinds of programs I had been involved with. Poetry for the People, diversity and social justice classes, the Trauma Prevention and Recovery certificate, and yes, Project Survive and the Vampire Slayers, right? All right, so this is when I'm worried we're going to lose these programs that reach out to immigrants, both documented and undocumented. That reach out to survivors of sexual and other traumas. That reach out to people with disabilities, formerly incarcerated people. These are the people these programs reach.
Hello, my name is Thea Matthews. I'm a proud student, proud City College student, as well as a member of the Save CCSF Coalition. I love this school. You know, standing here today with this lawsuit set in motion, we get to depower the ACC sanctions to shut the City College down. Because clearly some need to be reminded. Access to education is a universal right. How could a city that prides itself with education allow for such an atrocity to happen? We deserve to have a college-level education open to the public for all people, regardless of race or socioeconomic standing in San Francisco. You know, what we see with the City College's threat of closure is another example of how access to education is declining while the price of education is rising in the United States. I myself come from an impoverished background already. And similar to so many students, I scrape by with very little. You know, I jump the hurdles of life to exist as I go to school full-time, work part-time, and volunteer in between time. However, similar to many students, my time here is dedicated around City College. If the ACC sanctions actions follow through, the question that comes to mind is, where are we going to go? Or rather, why do we have to leave? Prior to coming to City College, I didn't know who I was. You know, what I wanted to do, or why I was even alive. It wasn't until I began taking courses at this campus that I felt absolutely grounded in accessing my potential, recognizing my worth, and reaffirming my value as a human being. And that is why City College of San Francisco is so vital for me, as well as the lives of many students. City College allows us to feel and live up to our own potential in whatever we decide to do, regardless of whether we have a major or a clear direct focus of a career. we are welcomed anyway in the arms of CCSF. And we need that embrace. We need to feel welcomed by an institution that caters to such a vast array of non-conventional students. The warm embrace we feel becomes a strong lifeline for many students. And to have that be cut short would not only affect the current students that are enrolled, but the possible future City College students that have yet to be born. City College needs to stay open, alive, and accredited.
In my opinion, this can be an effective way to resolve the matter, perhaps in a faster way than the other two cases might. But again, we're all on the same page. I spoke with the city attorney last week. I spoke with Bob Bezimick, the attorney for the CFT, yesterday, and we are working together.
Okay, so Joe.
Hi, Joe Fitzgerald, Big Guardian. Mr. Seigel, how does the legal argument in this lawsuit differ from the other legal arguments before it?
Okay. So the question is, how does the legal argument differ? It doesn't differ very much. The most important, let me try to put this in a way that will make sense. When you, the other two lawsuits are constructed primarily to assert various claims under different statutes, particularly the Unfair Business Practices Act. We have included that in our case, but we also have this writ of mandate process. And a writ of mandate, for those of you who are not lawyers, is a kind of injunction, right? It's what's called an equitable remedy, but a writ of mandate is a legal procedure and a vehicle that you can use to challenge an administrative decision, whether we're talking about, you know, the housing authority denying someone a place to live, or the planning department making a decision that you can't put a roof on your garage, or something like that, or in this case, the ACCJC making a decision which is contrary to law. So what it says is that to the court, these people are operating in violation of law, therefore their decisions need to be overturned. Well, I mean, you know, that's a hard question, because writs of mandate, he says, how have these writs, it's actually a petition for a writ of mandate. We're asking the court to issue the writ of mandate. But again, there's so many different contexts in which they arise. I don't know if anybody's kept figures, but they are successful when you have the evidence and the legal argument in your support.
Is there case law for this request for writ of mandate against any other accrediting body in the country that you know of?
Neil, come answer that question.
Case law for this type of approach against accrediting agencies?
I'm Neil Satterland. I helped pull the complaint together. There are not many written decisions challenging de-accreditations specifically. There are a few, and they have prevailed. Several courts have found that you have a duty to sort of act basically fairly and to make sure that the evidence supports your position when you are deciding to pull accreditation. And the decisions that I have found challenging a de-accreditation, the court was always willing to strike down the de-accreditation, that is, the school won. I have not found the accrediting agency winning in any of my research.
Where?
I had to start reading from a complaint in the middle of a press conference. It's, can I email you?
Sure, but I just didn't know if you knew what states.
Oh, there are only about, 6 or so decisions that I have found, but they're sort of scattered. I think one of them was in DC, the one that I relied most heavily on.
Please email me.